minutes into 11 a.m. in Central African time. Thank you very much for staying with us. Artificial intelligence, well, it's becoming more powerful, but it's also becoming more expensive to run, as we note the research by Anthropic, the company behind Claude AI Assist, found that AI agents can use far more computing power than a normal chatbot. Gartner, which is a global technology research and advisory firm, is now predicting that more than 40% of agentic AI projects could be cancelled by the end of 2027, with rising costs among the biggest concerns. So this is now the big question. Are we investing in artificial intelligence before fixing the foundations that it actually depends on? And that includes environmental factors, by the way. But here we are. We are here now to unpack why the future of AI may depend less on buying smarter technology and more on getting the data right. Warren Olivier is joining me in their capacity as Cloudera's Regional Vice President for Africa. Warren, welcome to the show. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mmaseko. It's very nice to be on your show. Really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much. And I really am hoping that we'll get a better understanding of what is happening. There's just so much big terminology, the research by Anthropic, I beg your pardon, and these computer-powered chatbots and all of that. I mean, we really are trying to simplify this information so that we can understand it. But why are so many enterprises, and AI projects failing to translate these technological investments into measurable business value at this time? I mean, what does that look like and mean when we look at the implementation journey and where it's going wrong?
Okay, thank you. So I guess, the foundation for AI is data, right, as we know, and large amounts of data. And, we see up to 95% of enterprise AI projects are actually failing to deliver measurable business value, right? So MIT's Project Nanda found in 2025, the Gen AI Divide study, that 95% of generative AI pilots show no measurable financial return, and only 5% make it to the real value. So in MIT's own conclusion, this isn't really a reflection of which model am I choosing. It's a quality or the quality problem, but it's more of an organizational and data readiness one. So, you've heard the concept of garbage in, garbage out. So our data needs to be accurate. It needs to be clear so that AI can get an accurate outcome.
Okay, so perhaps let's interrogate what needs to happen from the onset. What needs to happen differently as we kickstart so that we can prevent what we're seeing with these consequential mistakes at organizational level?
So I think it's a bit of there's a journey that we need to go on, right? And with disruption, so make no mistake, this is a disruptive technology that has obviously really good outcomes for us. But we need to take it in a kind of an agile type of methodology where we look at saying, okay, let's first take a look at our storage. Let's have a look at our storage discovery. Let's clean that up and let's assess that. Then let's map that current estate. And also it gives us the opportunity to say, well, let's also clean out here. Why must we migrate irrelevant or outdated data? So we have the ability then to clean, to understand what we're trying to do. Then I would be looking at the likes of, my architecture and what that planning looks like. Where is the workload that I'm trying to deliver AI from? Is it located on premise? Is it located in the public or private cloud? Is it sovereign cloud? Is it at the edge? So then I can define that target state and what are the migration waves I want to do? Is it a big banged or a phased approach? Because remember, the systems need to stay live. So there's a lot of things to take into account. And then when we're doing our pilots and I guess mobilization, you could say, is, are we making sure we understand what are we trying to achieve? What is the outcome we're trying to do? Before we just dive into AI, what's the financial, benefit that we get from that? As we move these kind of payloads. And then we need to, once we understand that, we understand the outcome, not just doing AI for AI's case, but actually doing it to get a revenue return, whether it's an efficiency gain or creating additional revenue streams. Then once we've understood that, we see the value we're going to get, we should validate that before we do any of the cutover and then do our testing, fail over to this new environment. After which, I think is something, a step a lot of customers tend to forget, is we need to then optimize that. And are there areas where we can retirement? So we want to really maximize our efficiency here.
All right. Well, that sounds like a plan. That makes sense to me, even though I know very little about artificial intelligence. But I want to talk to you about the other role players, the other important role players in making sure that the data is not only there, but it is of good quality. So when we look at data quality, these fragmented systems, and and the weakening of the systems, as you noted in your response there, Warren, let's look at governance and how that's affecting the data quality and the performance of artificial intelligence, and perhaps other organizational role players that should be speaking to one another to make sure that this is as sustainable as you noted.
That's a great question, Mmaseko. So I think, we spoke about treating AI as a model picking decision rather than a data readiness one is the wrong thing. We need to be looking at our data first, and we chatted about that. But as you rightly say, bolting on governance and access controls after the pilot's already running, instead of building it from day one, is going to fail, right? We can't go and bolt it on later. We need to have governance up front. And if we look at the concept of where is my actual data residing now, governance means it's going, depending on where I'm located, whether I'm on premise, at the edge, in public cloud, private cloud, it's going to have different types of governance that I need to adhere to or build. So I want to rather have a data in one physical location that I can put one governance layer, one risk profile and security posture across that data, but bring the power of the cloud to my data. So I don't actually move my data anywhere. I rather bring the compute power to my data. That helps with regulation, sensitivity of data, proprietary data. And then I think we also need to have a look at, as we mentioned, the business value before that project even starts. What are we trying to achieve, right? So we need to have something to measure against. And then once we've got those building blocks in, then we now start scaling. Because you'll see that pilots and demo environments or MVPs for that matter will look great on paper initially. As soon as we get into production and start scaling, that's where we start uncovering all of these concerns, right? And that's when we don't want to be at risk. So I think the governance is absolutely crucial, and we maintain the data quality and also understand the outcome that we're trying to achieve.
Okay. I think this also just indicates how important, consultative measures are at this time, because, I mean, we're going to take a break, and I'd like us to actually interrogate the statistics, the 40% of agentic AI projects that could be cancelled by the end of the year 2027, which is literally around the corner, okay, because of these rising costs and the other big concerns that surround this. On the line with me, Warren Olivier from Cloudera. He's the Vice President for Africa, and we really are looking at what this all means when it comes to making artificial intelligence and these projects that we're trying to come up with. They're becoming very expensive. How can we mitigate that before the end of 2027? We take a break and return.
Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Tsepiso Makwetla.
When we hear the 14th of July, an anthem should come to mind.
I'm waiting. It's American.
French.
Huh?
Yes.
But then they must be similar.
The American is.
You had the same thing.
The French is. They're very different.
All right. Now we can hear the difference.
It's Bastille Day today, French National Day.
Sorry, French croissants.
I know.
French croissants is to the extent of my love.
Oh, dear.
Big continent, bigger conversations. Rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Tsepiso Makwetla. 6 till 9 a.m. on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Look closer. Listen deeper. This is The Channel with Mosito on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
All right, 21 minutes into 11 a.m. in Central African time. Thank you very much for staying with us. Warren continues to join me on the line. He is the Regional Vice President for Africa at Cloudera. And we're really answering, amongst other questions, whether we're investing in AI before fixing the foundations that actually depend on it. Okay, what is going on? Because this is quite a big statistic. 40% of agentic AI projects could be cancelled by the end of 2027, as we see research tell us, because of the rising costs and other big concerns around AI. Warren, AI, of course, it's becoming more expensive, but also very, you know, complex, if that's the term, complex to deploy. How should businesses then assess whether a project is generally creating value? Because you spoke a lot about that in the first segment, the creation of value before anything else, and then demonstrating from there on. So how are businesses able to determine that before they even begin?
Look, Mmaseko, the Gartner's research attributes the majority of AI projects' failures to poor data, right, as we spoke about, the quality of that.
Yes.
And then we actually finding that a lot of these projects, they're not getting to what they need to from an AI reliability perspective. Bad data means you've got to reprocess, you've got to re-architect later, which costs a hell of a lot more, right, than getting the governance done right up front. And we're seeing these rising costs because of silos, right? We have in environments, we have data that sits here and sits all over the place. So how do we get a centralized view? With Cloudera, we help enterprises unlock the full value of their data wherever that resides. So unlike cloud-only platforms, we deliver a truly hybrid data analytics and AI platform, right, that can run consistently across public cloud, private cloud, on-premise, sovereign, and even air-gapped environments. So we need to have visibility of that data into what we refer to as a lakehouse, where we stream all of the information into one central location so that AI can consume that. What we've seen a lot of these failures is that it's in pockets, right? And as we mentioned earlier, we spoke about, we do a most viable product, or we do a proof of value in a small contained environment where we have access to the data. However, when we get to the real work, into the actual production and scaling this, we realize the data isn't all in one place. It sits all over the place, especially if we look at fintechs and banking customers as an example. You look at a 360-degree view of your customer. Now, that data doesn't reside nicely presented in one little location for us. So that's what we're seeing. And a lot of customers are starting to realize, as they go on their AI journeys now and trying to get the value, that there's more and more emphasis on having a structured modern data platform that I can consume from, which is completely, doesn't give you any vendor lock-in. It's agnostic to hardware. So we have a software-defined approach, and trying to get customers to yes, the rising costs of compute is astronomical, right? So how can we get smarter at reducing some of those costs from a software perspective, giving customers freedom of choice without any of that vendor lock-in?
Okay. I'm just fascinated because, you sparked another question around that, this artificial intelligence, the ethics around this. Please tell us around that, because, data collection is golden for the business, yes. But what are the ethics and the legalities that surround this work of data gathering? But also, with the ethics around that, we're looking at very tight budgets for South African businesses that are operating and wanting, and also the skills constraints that could come with this. Where are we in that conversation?
So I think the ethics is absolutely key, right? You see a lot of the different regions are actually starting to come out with these different, bills, if you will, which takes us back to our PPIA, protection of personal information, right? Essentially, we are the data, if you think about it. So we need to maintain a level of accountability and ethics across it. And that's where that governance comes as well. You get the regulations that come out all the time. I mean, if you look at the Central Bank of Nigeria recently, a couple of weeks ago, announced that all of the payment data that sits outside of the borders of Nigeria for banking, fintech, and kind of mobile wallet, your M-Pesas and your Momo monies and those sorts from the telcos, that data now actually now needs to reside within the boundaries of Nigeria. So that's because we're trying to maintain who owns the data. And I think that's where the ethics comes in, is who actually owns that data if I'm running in a public cloud? Is it owned by the customer, or is it owned by the individual, the person themselves? So that's why we have to have strict ethics and governance across it, so we maintain accountability.
Right. Oh, I'm so glad I asked that, because people actually want to know what is happening with the data, and where does it land up in this. But just in the second layer of my question around the skills constraints, I mean, how can businesses on the continent actually navigate that? Skills development around making sure that these operations are done not only foundationally right, as you noted, but then become sustainable in the long term and add value.
Yeah, but Teka, I think we've got to dive in, right? And it's a disruptive technology, make no mistake. But I think we've got to get our hands dirty and understand and test these models and push them, right? But at the same time, you cannot move away. You cannot add a level of risk. I need to have accountability, and I need to have the governance, right? So I mean, if you can bring the AI to your data, instead of you actually moving excuse me, I've got a call coming through. Let me just close that. Apologies. But if you can actually, if you can actually bring the AI to your data, you aren't putting your data into somebody else's hands, right? And you can just remember that data is your proprietary, sensitive company information, right? So if I can rather bring the power of the cloud to my data, it enables organizations to accelerate that AI adoption, maintaining governance, security, compliance, but then also control over the most valuable asset, which is their data. Now, from a understanding of it across the continent, we're actually quite well set. I was recently in East Africa, and I'm absolutely amazed by the level of technicality and understanding. We've actually come from AI, I believe, has fundamentally changed cloud architecture, right? So we are, and the way things are actually done. So there's a unique opportunity for postgrad people that are coming out of school to actually learn it like it's a brand new platform, which it is, and a brand new architecture. So they can have a level footing after anybody who's been 20 years in the industry. This architecture and platforms that we're seeing is fundamentally different. So they actually have a great opportunity to get involved. And I would push that and say, this isn't changing, this isn't going anywhere. We might as well embrace it right now, get to understand it, and grow with it, and use the AI to make us more efficient.
Absolutely. That's actually great advice. Post your studies. This is definitely the way to go, especially if you want to do a deeper investigation as to technologies and modern technologies. This is it. Cloudera is a since business, okay? It was founded in the year 2008, and they've been doing a lot of really good work in hybrid data and AI, as an AI platform company that is an enterprise. Thank you very much, Warren, for this. Greatly informative, and I think there are so many other subtopics that we need to bring you back for, because there's so many layers to unpack when we look at artificial intelligence and how it is run and how it can be sustainable on the continent, which presents with its own unique challenges. But thank you very much for today. Hey?
You're very welcome. Thank you, Mmaseko. Have a lovely day further.
You too. Warren Olivier, Cloudera's Regional Vice President for Africa, really looking at the expense of running artificial intelligence, but he's elevated that conversation for us to really look at the other foundational matters that govern how AI is run and how it ultimately can be sustainable. It is 11:30. Fix Lingwati standing by with the latest sports.